Hey, what's up, guys? So for today's virtual learning day, I've decided to do a video to walk you through a lesson on the medieval age and the Black Death. But real quick, I'm just going to go over the directions. The first thing you want to do, probably before you even listen to this video, is you need to complete the warm-up. So that is a Rorschach test. Basically, it's going to be a list of words, and you're just going to tell me what you think when you see them. But the main assignment for the day is the Middle Age and Black Death questions. So that's this assignment right here. That's the main classwork grade. So questions 1 through 5 of that assignment are going to be based off of this PowerPoint, which I'm going to go over in just a second. And the sixth question is just for you to list 6 interesting facts from this documentary right here. So you can either watch the documentary on your own through YouTube, or you can come to my classroom on Wednesday or Thursday of this week or next week and watch it on the big screen. So whatever you want to do. So all I'm going to do today is just talk about this lesson right here. I'm going to spend maybe 5 minutes on it, and you can use my lesson to fill out questions 1 through 5 of the medieval age and the Black Death questions. All right, so let's get right into it. The medieval age and the Black Death. So the medieval ages, also known as the Middle Ages, took place between the 11th and 15th century in England, and they're generally considered to have began around the year 1066 AD and have gone up until 1445 AD. So one of the most important things about this time period that's going to be relevant to the literature we'll be reading next time is that there is significant political power held by the Roman Catholic Church. And what that means is that there wasn't any kind of separation of church and state, nothing like that. The Roman Catholic Church was extremely important. If you didn't listen to them, you're going to have a bad time. So the medieval age, or the Middle Ages, were followed by the time of the Anglo-Saxons. So this is right after the time period of the people who wrote Beowulf, but it preceded the Renaissance. So that is the time of Shakespeare, which we're going to be spending a lot more time on in just about a week or so. So again, like I said, the medieval ages were also known as the Middle Ages, and the reason for that is because they were in the middle of 2 very significant time periods in England and essentially Europe as a whole. So you had the Anglo-Saxon time period, which is a very simple time period of this kind of warrior culture, and then smack dab in the middle of that and the Renaissance, which was a rebirth of artistry and humanistic values. Right in the middle of that was the Middle Ages or the medieval ages. So it all got kicked off by the Norman invasion of England in 1066. So basically, a bunch of people from Normandy and France, which back then used to be separate countries, they all came across the ocean and invaded England. And what happened was this resulted in a feudal system, which is a social hierarchy led by a king with many castles governed by nobles and knights. So this is a social hierarchy. Number one, you have a king who rules over the entire country of England. He's the head honcho in charge of everything else. Right below him were nobles and religious leaders. So these were kind of like the social elite, like aristocrats, but mostly religious leaders such as priests or bishops. So these people were pretty important. The only thing that's really worth mentioning about this gap right here is that the Pope was in charge of the Catholic Church. And in a way, the Pope was a little bit higher than the king, because technically the king doesn't have to listen to the Pope, but if he doesn't listen to the Pope, then it's going to mess up society in a lot of ways, as we'll talk about when we get to the Protestant Reformation much later on from now. So right below the nobles and religious leaders, the third highest caste in this system were the knights. And the knights were not just people who wore shining armor and had shields and swords and fought in battles. Knights were actually landowners. So basically, all throughout England, you have these little small city-states or castles that were ran by knights and nobles and religious leaders. So the knights, they would leave these areas sometimes to go fight in battles, but essentially they also owned whole entire areas. And pretty much the knights were in charge of the peasants, and those were just the common people. Realistically, chances are, if you or me were born during this time period, we would be peasants. Most people were peasants, and they worked for the knights and the nobles. These are people like merchants, or just regular people who worked the land, or serfs, that sort of thing. The only people that were below the peasants were slaves, who did not have any type of rights and were literally owned by other people, including peasants. So 1, the king, 2, nobles, religious leaders, 3, knights, and 4 were peasants. So while the common people of England at this time spoke English, a language did not yet have a proper system of spelling or grammar, because basically people never wrote it down. It was a mashup of other languages primarily spoken by common people. So it's kind of like you have the Old English that we read with Beowulf, that was constantly evolving and was only being spoken by common people like these guys over here. Whereas the elite, or the people who are higher on the social hierarchy, or people who could actually read, which were not many people at all, these people spoke Latin or French, and those were considered to be higher languages and likewise spoken by the social elite. The reason that everyone spoke Latin or French was because, like I said before, the French and Norman invaders had come from France to invade England. So naturally, they invaded with their own culture. So in a lot of ways, England during this time period was kind of like an extension of France, at least culturally. So religion was also extremely important in medieval England for a number of reasons, such as warfare, a depressingly high infant mortality rate, and a short life expectancy. And you might be thinking, like, okay, what does this have to do with religion? You just have to think about it. It's very easy to accept religion, even a religion which at the time was considered to be very hypocritical and corrupt. It's very easy to accept that religion if there's death all around you because of war and a very short life expectancy. It's very easy to want to believe in a great afterlife, in a heaven, if your current life is surrounded by death and famine. But also, of course, Catholicism was the official religion of the Roman Empire, and when the Roman Empire fell, everyone was still pretty much at least everyone in Western Europe was still pretty much all about Catholicism. It was the official religion. So the party's all over when the Black Death comes in the year 1349, which was spread to England through fleas from Asia. So some symptoms included large external tumors, extreme fever, vomiting of blood, and most victims died within a week of infection. So imagine you or your friends or family start showing these tumors, or you're throwing up blood, or you have a fever. You're probably going to die in a few days because you have the Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague. So this killed half of England's population. So half the people in England, so looking up here, half of this country is basically dead. And it's still considered the largest pandemic in human history. There's been no other time period in human history when, because of either plague or famine, this many people died. As a matter of fact, a third of all of Europe, so this is all of Europe up here, a third of all of these people died. It'd be like if an atom bomb came up and it just killed everyone in this area. So this was a huge deal and had major social changes. And the people in England and all across Europe who were super religious, that were praying every day to God, they felt betrayed. So imagine, how would you feel if you did all your work in order to finally graduate and somebody lost your diploma and you were forced to come back next year? You'd be pretty upset about it, right? You'd feel betrayed and let down. Why did I do all this work when I'm just going to get screwed over anyway? So that's how the people in Europe felt after the Black Death. They were worshiping God. They were trying everything they could do to be a good Christian, yet all it led up to was just death and famine. So this caused major religious, social, and economic upheavals, and it shook many people's faith in the Catholic Church. However, it was soon followed by the Renaissance, aka the rebirth. So the Renaissance being called the rebirth really is pretty closely connected to the fact that it was right after an event called the Black Death. So you have to think about it. Even in life, sometimes if you're going through rough stuff, it's usually going to be followed by something beautiful and amazing. And we're going to get to the Renaissance a couple class periods from now, which I would probably argue is the most significant time period of Western history, if not human history as a whole. It made a huge difference, and it really defined the direction of human civilization from that point on. Alrighty, guys. So go ahead and finish this up and have a great virtual learning day.